What's up everyone, welcome back to Just Finish Coding. This is part 1 of our brand new platformer game development series on Scratch 3 where you will be learning how to make a complete platformer game. In the finished game we're going to have 4 different levels or obstacle courses, and within each of the levels we're going to have some juicy fun stuff such as spikes, lava, trampolines, and also for a bonus I'm going to add in some lock and key animations. You'll also be learning how to throw in some epic platformer scripts that's going to enable you to have momentum, wall jumping, slope detection, and a lot more of that fun stuff. So without further ado, let's get right into our code. So once you've set up your Scratch 3 editor, the first thing I'm going to do is to delete the cat sprite and to import 2 other sprites. Now in case you do not know, there will be a link in the description which will take you to a Google Drive attachment which will contain all the art that I'm using in this entire series, along with the code as well. So what you can do is to click the link and download all the necessary files first. And as of now, I'm going to be importing all the levels. But first I'll just be importing the first one, and I'll import the rest of the levels within the costumes so that we can just switch costumes instead of having 4 different sprites. And after I import all of these things, what I'm going to do now is to import our player sprite. And the player sprite is called, I believe, platformer. So I'm just going to click that, and all of them will be an SVG file, so it will be directly editable in the Scratch 3 editor itself. Alright, once you have all this, I'm going to rename this to be level first, and I'm going to make the platformer sit first because it'll be a bit easier. Alright, so first within the platform I'm going to set up a few variables. I'm going to delete the myVariable, and the first variable I'm going to create for all sprites is going to be called level. I'm going to do it in all capitals just because it's for all sprites, so that we have some way of distinguishing it without testing it out. Alright, I'm going to click OK, and after this I'm going to make another variable, this time for this sprite only, and this is going to be called xvel, which stands for x velocity. After that I'm going to click create a new variable once again, and now I'll be creating the yvel variable. Alright, and lastly I'll be creating one more variable which is going to be called time in air. And you'll understand where we use this a little bit later. Alright, click OK. And apart from the level, you don't really have to show anything. So now when the green flag is clicked, that's when our program is going to start. And right now itself, I'm going to scroll, I'm going to zoom out so that you guys can see better. And yeah, when the green flag is clicked, I'm first going to set the level to be 1. Okay, and this is important you do it here. Alright, so once you're done with this, now I'm going to head over to events and say broadcast message and wait, and the first message I'll be broadcasting is going to be called initialize, and the second message which I'll be broadcasting is going to be called start game. Alright, so pretty simple messages, but we'll be having these when I receive message blocks throughout for every single sprite, so it's important you add this wait here so that the code doesn't rush through. Alright, once you're done with that, now we can say when I receive initialize, because our platformer is going to receive the message as well. When we do that, first I'm going to hide, and I'm also going to clear all the graphic effects, because we will be having some animations with our platformer a little bit later on. So it's important that our platformer is set up properly with all the color and ghost effects to be nil and it's properly whispered. So once you're done with that, you can just say go to coordinates. I'm just going to go to the same coordinate every single level so that it makes my life a little bit easier. And the coordinate is going to be -197, and the y coordinate is going to be -50. Alright, so that's going to be our starting coordinate, which is going to be somewhere on the left here if you can see my mouse. Alright, so now I'm going to head over to the level. Now I'm not going to have when green flag is clicked at all, and I'm directly going to start with when I receive initialize. So when we do receive initialize, just like the platformer, I'm not going to show, I'm going to hide. And the level isn't really going to have any graphic effects, so I don't have to add in that block. And what I can do now is to directly start with the costume. Okay, and what I mean is, since we have 4 different levels, each level is going to take on a different costume based on this level variable right here. So what we need to do is to have a costume as some kind of a function of the level, if you want to think about it that way. So what I'm going to do is when I receive start game, okay, not initialize, I'll be doing this in start game. What I'm going to do first is to switch costume to level, and that's why it's important to set up the level first over here, because let's just say we do it within start game. Okay, now if we do it in initialize, it'll be fine, but you'll understand why we can't do it here later on. But if we put it inside start game, like when I receive start game set level to 1, the problem would be that code may execute first, and due to that, this code is just going to crash because we will be switching to the wrong costume. Also, we'll be restarting. Whenever we restart, we will be broadcasting these two messages. So it's important to keep the level as it is and not change it when we're just restarting. So that's important. Anyway, you'll get that later on. So when we do receive start game, we'll switch costume to level, and each of the levels are centered, okay, in our costumes. So because of that, we aren't always going to go to the same position. So what I'm going to do is head over to the motion tab, grab one block, now head over to control, grab an if else and put it in there first. Now I'm going to head over to operators, grab an equal to, and first I'll be checking if the level is equal to 1. Now if the level is equal to 1, then we will be going to this coordinate right here, which is x0, and the y coordinate is -73. Alright, just some coordinates where our level is basically centered up. And let me just switch to the first costume so that you guys have a better idea. Okay, now what I'm going to do is to duplicate this once again and duplicate this once more. And finally, for the last one, I'll just put it inside an else anyway. So I'm going to duplicate just the go-to, and here I'm going to change this to be level 2. This is going to be level 3, and yeah, we don't need to do anything for level 4. Now for the level 2, the position is going to be 28, -120. For level 3, it's going to be 18 and -8, and for level 4, it's going to be 4 and -26. Okay, I just found out these coordinates by sheer trial and error, and in case you actually want to make your own costumes and try out different coordinates, please go ahead and do so. There's absolutely no problem experimenting with this part of it. Just try to follow me along with the platformer engine, because that's the most important part of our code. Now we can head back to the platformer sprite, and within variables, I want to create another variable. Once again, click for this sprite only, and this variable is going to be called player died. And this is going to be controlling, whether our player fell into lava or something like that, and whether he's still alive or not. And this is going to be useful when within our main, repeat loop, our game loop. So just keep that along for now. So now I'm going to start the code with when I receive start game, which is the main part of our code. And what I'm going to do here is make a new block or a new function, whatever you want to call it. And this function is going to be called begin, which is responsible for just setting up all the constant things right before a level. You could click run without screen refresh because we aren't really going to be doing anything with respect to the screen here, and then click OK. So when we're defining begin, what we'll do is just set up the variables. Okay, so first set xvel to be 0. Then we'll be setting yvel to be 0 as well. Then I'm going to set time in air to be 0. Alright, so set time in air to be 0, and set player died to be no. Set player died to be no. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do now. We will be adding some more blocks later on, but it's enough if you have those. So now when we do receive start game, remember we're still hiding, so it's important we show. And after we're done showing ourselves, it's important to first call in that begin function so that all these blocks execute. So once we're done with that, now head over to control and grab a repeat until. Okay, and this is the main repeat loop if you want to call it, and we're going to repeat until the player died variable is yes. So player died is going to be some kind of a boolean variable, although there aren't any boolean variables in Scratch. We are making it like 1, so it's just going to have two values. Okay, it's either going to be yes or it's going to be no. So if it's yes, it means player has already died, and if it's no, it means the player hasn't died. And whenever you're using boolean variables, it's a good thing to add in a question mark in the end. But as far as time in air is concerned, that's not a boolean variable. So actually speaking, I could just rename it, and I'm going to do it. Just call it time in air, and our time in air is just going to be a number. Okay, it could be any number above 0, basically. Alright, so once you're done with that, repeat until player died is yes. Now we can make a new block, and this block is going to be called the platformer engine block. And within this, we're going to have two types of engines. Okay, the first one is going to be what's called an X engine, which takes care of the movement in the X axis. And then there's going to be a Y engine, which takes care of the movement in the Y axis. So both of them will be running without screen refresh within it. And we'll also run this main function without screen refresh. And it's very important you click that right now. So I'm going to click OK, and there we go. So now you want to scroll down as much as possible because you will need a lot of room for this platformer engine and before it. So I'm going to do it right here. Now I'm going to set up some kind of a movement block, and I thought I did this earlier, but then it somehow switched back costumes. Anyway, so within our platformer engine right here, the first thing I'm going to do is head over to control, grab an if then, and I'm first going to check if the key right arrow is pressed. And if that is the case, then I'm going to move to the right, but I'm not just going to change x by something. What I'm going to do is to say change x velocity by 1.5, and that's the number which seemed to work the best for me, but you can tweak this around a little bit and see what works best for you. Now I'm going to duplicate this once again, and in this case I'm going to say if left arrow key is pressed, then I'm going to change x velocity by -5, okay? And now I'm going to set up the friction. And you may think, well, why do we need a friction and why do we need this x velocity at all if we're just going to move to the right? And the reason is all this is going to come very handy when we're using all of this for slopes and wall jumping. So just follow me along right here. This is a little bit more complicated, but it will be very useful later on. So set x velocity to, and here I'm going to set up the friction. Okay, I'm going to say 0.8 or 0.8 times the x velocity. So we're just basically decrementing the x velocity by 20% of itself every single time, so that eventually it gets so close to 0 that eventually Scratch is just going to say round off, x velocity is now 0, and we're not going to move anymore. So that's the idea, and you could tweak this around just like all the other blocks of code. The less you do it, the less friction there would be. I mean, the less you do it, the more friction there would be, and the more you increase this number, the less friction would be. It's kind of like, the opposite way. But I think 0.8 works best, so I'm going to leave it there. Now, before I call in the X engine, I'm going to add another if then, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is I want to change the position of the platformer only if the change in X velocity is pretty considerable. So for example, let's just say our X velocity is 0.500000001. Well, in that case, that's still going to be rounded off as it's going to be rounded off as 1 and not 0 or something like that, because the change is still rounded off to 1 because we can't have half pixel values, etc. But although the change may be like minuscule, we'd still round it off, and I don't really want that to happen. You could allow that, but I would prefer not to. So what I'm going to do is head over to operators, grab a less than. On the left hand side I'm going to put 0.9, okay, and after that in the right hand side I want to say absolute value of, and you can find that in the last block of operators which says abs of, and I'm going to put x velocity right there. Okay, so this means that the absolute value of the x velocity is less, okay, I meant greater than. Okay, so absolute value of x velocity is greater than -9. So if this is the case, it means the change in x velocity is considerable. So in this case, what I will be doing is to just say X engine, and we haven't created the block yet. So just hold on. I'm going to create two inputs or text. The first one is going to be called I believe X velocity, and the second one is going to be called slope. Okay, don't worry too much about the slope right now. But before you click OK, make sure you click run without screen refresh. All right, so create it, and okay, I didn't call the block anything. I'm going to call it X engine. X engine, and yep, just click OK now. All right, so now I'm going to scroll up and put this right there, and here what I'm going to do is to just call the X engine, and within my parameters I'm going to put not X velocity but instead round of X velocity. Okay, so that we don't have any half a pixel or quarter pixel values, etc. And for the slope, I'm just going to put in a number like 8. We can change this a little bit later in the next tutorial where we'll discuss slopes and all that, but just put in 8 for now. Okay, so now I'm going to edit the X engine block, and what I'm going to say is first we change X by the X velocity, but we're not going to stop right here. And since we're not refreshing the screen after every single block, the code would wait for this entire block to finish before it refreshes the screen. So change X by X well. And now I'm going to first check if we are touching the level. So if we are touching the level, then what I can do is to have a repeat until, alright, and I'm going to say repeat until not touching level. So repeat until, where's that not? Here we are. So repeat until not touching level. And in this case, I'm once again going to check if our x velocity is positive or negative. Okay, so what I'm going to do is see if x velocity is less than 0. Alright, so it means x velocity is negative, then we're moving to the left. But if we're moving to the left and we hit a platform, that means we have to move back to the right to be, away from it. So what I'm going to do here is to say change x by 1 and not -1. And similarly, if this is not the case and x is positive, then I'm going to say change x by -1. So it's the opposite way we're doing it. Alright, and that is pretty much all I'll be doing right now. There will be obviously a lot more with respect to our X engine, but for now I think that's enough. So now scroll back below to your platformer engine, and after this X engine, here's what you need to do. You want to say within control if the up arrow key is pressed. So now we're detecting the y-axis basically. So if key up arrow is pressed, then what we'll do is once again have another condition checker, and here we'll be checking if time in air is less than 4. So if time in air is less than 4. So time in air is going to be some kind of a basic timer, okay? And what this is going to enable us to do is if we're holding on to the up arrow key, for example, we'll be jumping a little bit higher than if we just press the up arrow key once. So it's kind of useful for that way. And it also makes wall jumping a lot easier, which you will see in the next video. So I'll say if time in air is less than 4, then I will be using my Y engine block, and the Y engine is going to be kind of like the X engine, but we'll just have one parameter inside. Okay, so Y engine, run without screen refresh, and the parameter is going to be Y well. Alright, now you can click OK, and just move your Y well away for now. So if 4 is greater than time in air, then what I'm going to do is to say Y engine, follow that up with a Y well. And it's important to note that we haven't set up gravity yet. So what I'll do right now is to just say set or just change y velocity by -2. So this you can view it as the gravity, and what many people will do would be just having an extra parameter saying jump height, gravity, etc. But since they are just going to be used once, I prefer just to do it like this. So I just realized I made a small mistake, and you don't want to call in the Y engine block there. What you instead want to do is to say set y well to be 11. Okay, so we need to increment the y well to be something so that we can jump higher. So have a set y well to be 11 there. And now we can scroll over to your Y engine. And what I'm going to do is to bring the X engine below so that we won't have any big problems with respect to our spacing, because our X engine is going to be pretty long, okay, especially when we get into the next few videos. So define Y engine, and I think I'll do it right here. Okay, there we go. I'm first going to change the Y axis or the Y position of the platformer by Y well, and after that what I'm going to do is to set time in air, or not set actually, change time in air by 1. And just like I said, time in air is going to be a simple timer. So the more we are away from the level, the more time we're away from the level, the greater time in air would be. And as soon as we touch the level once again, time in air would be set back to 0, and then we can jump. Okay, so change time in air by 1, and after that I'm going to have a repeat until. Okay, so I'm going to say repeat until not touching obstacle. So repeat until not touching obstacle, and not obstacle, I meant a level right there. So what we need to do is, once again, just like our X velocity, we need to check if the Y velocity is positive or negative. So if Y velocity is greater than 0, this means it's positive. Okay, and if it's positive, it means it's going up. So you can just put in the Y velocity right there. So in this case, what we're going to do is to not change there. We need to change Y by, and we need to do the opposite once again, because if it's positive, then we need to keep going down, because here you have to remember that we are touching a level. So I'm going to say change Y by -1, and yep, that is pretty much going to be it there. And if this is not the case, then I'm going to change Y by +1. But here what I'm also going to do is to set time in air to be 0 once again, because if we're setting time in air here, that doesn't mean we can jump and all of that, because this is within a repeat until, and Scratch is going to execute all this code serially, so we don't have to worry about that. And once we go down a level and then level obstacle and then come right back up, The user's obviously not going to see all that, but that's what's going to happen. Once we come back up, that means, we're back on track, and we can set the timer to be 0 once again so that the player can jump. Alright, I just want to check my code one last time, and yep, I think everything is fine. So I'm going to click the green flag, and yeah, I just realized I forgot to add in a show within our level. So I'm going to say show, alright, and now let's click OK. So now you can see that our platformer never actually goes down, and I think that's because we had all of this set up within a touching obstacle. So let me just check out my code once, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so I just went through my code, and the error turned out to be something so stupid. And that's just because we didn't put our platformer engine within our repeat until loop, so we were basically doing nothing. So once you add that in place and now you click the green flag, now you can see we already have some movement set up, and we can also jump a little bit with our arrow keys. Obviously, we can't go through all of this because we don't have wall jumping enabled yet, and that's also going to stop us from getting over this obstacle. But that's fine. As of now, I think that's what I'll be doing in this video. And in the next video, we'll be talking about how to get wall jumping in along with slope detection. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a like, and also don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.